Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist. I own 52 units of real estate and I help coach people to buy their first multifamily deal. So today I want to talk about why it's actually significantly cheaper to rent in California if you're living in the high cost of living markets like the Bay Area, like San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, Orange County. It's actually cheaper to rent because, like, for example, for me, living in Los Angeles and the house I'm currently in, if you include all my costs of property tax, HOA, insurance, the mortgage at a 6.5% interest rate, my all-in cost is about $7,500 a month. And if something breaks, I am responsible to fix that. Versus if you were to rent something very similar to this, I would say it's probably about $4,000. Maybe it won't be as nice compared to my brand new house here, but maybe for $4,000 you can get a similar 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, 1,700 square foot townhome, and you can rent that for $4,000 a month. So in a way, and then none of the repairs are your responsibility unless you do it yourself. So you can essentially save about half the cost to rent versus to own. Yes, you're losing out on the benefits of principal pay down. You're losing out on the benefits of market appreciation. You're losing on the benefit of owning a real estate long term, but you have the flexibility to move around, right? You have the flexibility to, you know, with your rent, that's the minimum you're going to pay, or the maximum you'll pay is $4,000 a month. With your mortgage and your expenses, the minimum I'm going to pay is $7,500 a month. But if something major happens, I need to cover that cost. So, in cheaper markets or more expensive markets like California, it may make sense to just rent and then not deal with the headache and versus buying a home. Like when I chose to buy a home in California, especially this home I'm living in now, I knew it was a bad financial decision, but it was a decision that I made not because it's an investment, it's because it was more of a lifestyle thing. And I've built up a large net worth. I built up a lot of real estate portfolio while I was renting a studio in Santa Monica. Like I was literally renting a 450 square foot studio in Santa Monica for $2,200 a month as I was buying 80 units of real estate in like 8 months. So at one point I owned 90 units of real estate and I was living in a small 450 square foot studio for about $2,300 a month. Because I was like, if I were to live in a condo, same exact condo that's a studio on Ocean Avenue, it would not cost $2,300 a month. I think just the HOA for the condos in Santa Monica is already $1,000 a month. So I got to live in Santa Monica, right by the ocean. Like literally, I could see the ocean and see the beach and see the pier from my apartment, and I was only paying $2,300 a month. Yes, was it a little bit older? Yes, was it a small studio? Yes, but you get a condo like right next door. Your HOA is at least $1,000 a month, and you either pay $200 for valet parking on top of that. So it's like half the cost just for HOA and that. So to me, it made sense to like rent in Santa Monica versus to like own something there because I knew I couldn't rent it out much. So, it's fine to like have a rental portfolio where it makes sense. Like if you want a cheaper cash flow market, that's why I invest in Oklahoma. That's why I invest in Alabama. It's okay to rent in California and use that rental income from Alabama, Oklahoma to cover your rent in California because, when you live in California, it's more of a lifestyle, right? Like I like the weather. I like the food. I like, the diversity. I like, just, there's pros and cons, right? But eventually I might get to the point where I don't want to deal with it anymore. I want to live somewhere cheaper. I want to not deal with as much traffic. And that's why people move to Vegas. That's why people move to Arizona. Obviously it's not very tax efficient in California. And, depending on what politics you like, you may or may not like it, right? But I don't really think too much about politics, if I'm being honest. So for me, it's more of a lifestyle thing because I like the weather. I like that it's easy to get. I can do a lot of things within a 2 hour radius, and there's just a lot in California, right? And there are cheaper pockets of California. Like if you're willing to live in like the high desert, if you're willing to live in like Palmdale, um, you could find something that's more affordable. Like like Fontana, another one. Like if you go more Inland Empire, so if you're willing to live in like not the main hubs, you can get something that's cheaper, that's more affordable. But obviously you're losing out on some things where you may not have as much food. Like for me, I live in LA. I can go to K Town. I can get Chinese food. I can get Vietnamese food. Whatever I want, I can get. So it's really a choice. But like I said, when I bought this house, it wasn't an investment. It's probably my worst investment, but it was more of a lifestyle choice for me after a decade of like sacrifice. And I was house hacking properties where I would live in the master and rent out rooms. I would live in a small studio as I was buying a bunch of real estate. And now I'm like, okay, I finally built up a foundation. I built up a net worth. Now I want to like enjoy my wealth that I built. So now I live in a house that I like, that I enjoy, in a location that I like. And eventually I know I'm gonna have to sell a property, pay off this house, which is a bad investment move, right? Because you want to like own real estate long term. So owning this home made me do two bad or it's bad for investment for two reasons. Number one, it's more expensive to live here versus to rent. I could take that money and invest something else. Number two is because I want this out of lifestyle, I'm gonna have to sell my first single family home that I bought, pay capital gains tax, pay depreciation recapture to take that to pay off this house. So now I'm not leveraged anymore. I would have sold a house that had a 3.125% interest rate to own this house free and clear, and it's purely for lifestyle. So it's not a return on investment; it's a return on lifestyle. ROL, return on lifestyle. Because I know that this would make my lifestyle very great, and eventually when I retire early and I travel the world or travel more frequently, months at a time, it's nice to have a home base here where I could be here for like a month or two. And let's say I fly to Taiwan and live there for a month or two. And then from Taiwan, you could go to Vietnam, you can go to Thailand, you can go wherever you want, right? So it gives me that flexibility of having that home base in an area I want to be that's paid off so that I could go travel to like Southeast Asia. Because as I kind of like been traveling with my Christine, my wife, like we just realized that we just like to travel to like Southeast Asia. Like the food's amazing, it's really cheap there, and the flights aren't that bad to go there. Like most of my like I just bought tickets to Vietnam for $700 with a layover in Korea for $700. I'm looking at flights to go to Banff, and they're charging me like $500 to do a 3-hour flight, and I have to pay another $100 to check in one piece of luggage. Like that's $600. Whereas I'm spending $100, and then I'm going to Banff and I'm paying $300 a night to stay in a small hotel room, versus if I go to Southeast Asia for $50 a night, I can get a nice luxury high rise hotel. So to me, I don't know. We just kind of gravitate towards traveling towards Southeast Asia, but obviously if you go there, you have to do at least a week and a half to 2 weeks to travel in the time zone. But if you travel to Banff or like national park, it's gonna be just as expensive, but you can do a 4-day trip out of it, which is a lot easier to get. So I don't know, just kind of me venting a little bit because I'm like, geez, like $600 for a 3-hour flight to Banff versus $700 I go to Vietnam. And these 4-day trips to national parks are expensive because hotels are expensive and all that. But hey, I want to check out the parks. Eventually, like I want to check out Banff. I want to check out Glacier National Park. Kind of the big ones, to really get that cabin experience. But it's so expensive compared to like going to like Southeast Asia. So I know that when eventually we retire early, we're probably gonna travel Southeast Asia months at a time because you can get a hotel for like 30-50 bucks a night. So imagine that. You stay at a hotel for a month, it's 1,500 bucks, which is cheaper than rent. Um, and what we could do is like, if I really want to utilize it, I could Airbnb out this house and maybe make enough where it covers the cost of this mortgage here so that I could travel, for free, or just cover the cost of travel for that month. Or if I make money from the Airbnb, then I could use that money to um, pay for my travels as well, right? If we want to go down the route, or if I don't want to deal with people in my house, then I just could just pay for the mortgage here, which is not gonna be much because it'll be a paid off house. So for me, like I said, going back to this, I, like when I built wealth, I don't want to be restricted to where I want to live. Like I want to live where I want to live, and right now I want to live in California, but maybe in 10, 15 years, maybe I don't care to live in California anymore, and obviously I could live in Vegas for a lot cheaper, right? Like significantly cheaper to live in Vegas. And I can get a bigger house if I want to in Vegas for cheaper in Vegas. Um, so it's just really like, to me, if like I know some people are so optimized on like income to like cost of living ratio, but if you're a slave to your location, like obviously I can live in like Alabama, like I can move into my Huntsville, Alabama property that I own, and my total monthly cost is $1,300 a month, which is nothing It's a beautiful house. It's brand new, great area, but there's not much Asian food in that area, right? As good compared to LA. So, and I'm not close to friends and family, and it's further away. So like for me, that's not worth it in terms of like the lifestyle compromise. I don't want to be a slave to the area that I live in. I want the option to be able to like visit my friends and family relatively easily and like be around good food because me and Christine prioritize being food. We want to be able to like do things, activities for free. Um, and this is what we prioritize right now, but maybe in 10, 15 years, maybe we'll be okay to open to moving somewhere else depending on our situation, right? If we want to save money, if we want to do this. So it's just really a lifestyle choice, and I don't want to be a slave to that because I don't want to like achieve early financial freedom and be forced to live in some place I don't want to live in because it's cheaper, right? Like for me, I just want a hub, and then I want to be able to like travel to like Southeast Asia and enjoy good food and do good sights. And one area that I haven't traveled to yet because not many people travel there except to go home to visit family is like China. Like I want to check out like China and see what it's like to travel there. Obviously I'm gonna like the food because they have a lot of food variety, and I assume the hotels are gonna be pretty inexpensive because there's so many hotels there. But it may not be as like tourist friendly, right? So, but luckily, Christine is fluent in Chinese. But yeah, I think we just would like I travel to a lot of places. Like Europe is cool. It's very historical. It's very nice, but hotels are expensive. The food's not as great. Versus Southeast Asia, you get a little bit of everything. So I already know that we're gonna try Europe countries like once or twice just to experience it. But the places that we'll constantly go to back and forth are probably gonna be like Asia, like Japan, Vietnam, China. If we like it, just like these areas consistently traveling there. So that's why I want to basically travel when I can, right? So it went way off topic here, but if you want to live in California because you like being here, it's cheaper to rent. Like, don't feel bad if you don't own a house. I know a lot of people feel bad and ashamed that they don't own a house. I'm like, dude, it's actually cheaper to rent, right? But if you want to own a house, um, just know it's not an investment. It's purely a quality of life metric. And but if you're tied, because I know a lot of people who they bought a nice house, $1.5 million house, and they're forced to work 3 jobs as a pharmacist. Don't do that. You're better off just renting, right? Or buy a smaller house that's cheaper. So, don't be a slave to your mortgage. So that's the way Christine and I, when we decided to buy this house, we knew we're not going to be a slave to this mortgage because I know that I could pay off this house by selling another house. And right now we're working, so we can afford it. But the moment I don't want to work, I'm going to sell a house, pay off this house, and now I'm not a slave to this mortgage anymore. My total cost will be $2,000 a month for property tax, insurance, HOA, which is affordable for us. And this is purely a lifestyle choice, right? To live here. Like if it was an investment, I wouldn't buy this. If it was something I wanted to house hack, no, it wouldn't work out, right? So just know that if you're living in California, it actually makes more sense to rent versus to buy, unless you built up your foundation and you really want a house and you don't mind working for a long time. Then at that point, yeah, you can get a mortgage or a house in California. So, anyways, sorry for my huge tangent about travel, but you know me, I go off the cuff. So, if you want to buy multifamily real estate with some guidance and mentorship, click on my link tree down below. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.